aim is to accurately track sales throughout the supply chain and to provide a more realistic picture of where fertiliser is applied to land. And I suppose there's a good chance with this that we're going on sales data from the major importers at the moment. So this will give us a much clearer picture and possibly a lower number in terms of what's being used across the country by farmers. Because at the moment we don't have any idea of what's sitting on farms or in co-ops.
Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Chocolate Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. Now in this episode we're joined by Dr. Finbarr O'Regan from the Department of Agriculture. Finbarr discusses the introduction of the National Fertiliser Database. We discuss the Fertiliser Register and Finbarr takes us through the key dates, the registration process, how it will work for the coming season and some of the implications for both merchants and farmers. We finish up the episode discussing the importance of entering closing stocks this autumn. We hear first from Finbarr.
The National Fertiliser Database, I suppose, is it's a promise that was made to the EU in order to maintain the derogation. I suppose that was the first kind of part of it, and then there's also an environmental side of it with emissions from chemical fertilizers and lime. So I suppose that's where it came from originally, and we've been working on it, I suppose, for the last year and a half, since February of last year, just to get everyone on board. So co-ops will have to enter their sales to farmers. Farmers have a little bit of work to do just to register and to enter opening and closing stocks. And we will have a handle then on what's used throughout the country.
I suppose maybe this is quite basic, but just to clarify, it's only accounted for chemical fertiliser and lime. We're not talking about slurry imports for this fertiliser database. Yeah,
that's correct. It's nothing to do with slurry. It's chemical fertiliser and lime, yeah.
I suppose that gives us the background. Maybe you might just tell us what the aims of the National Fertiliser Database are.
Yeah, so I suppose the aim is to accurately track sales throughout the supply chain and to provide a more realistic picture of where fertiliser is applied to land. And I suppose there's a good chance with this that we're going on sales data from the major importers at the moment. So this will give us a much clearer picture and possibly a lower number in terms of what's being used across the country by farmers. Because at the moment we don't have any idea of what's sitting on farms or in co-ops. So we'll have a better handle on exactly what's used, hopefully. And we'll also be allowed to share data with industry. This may be useful for some sustainability schemes, but that data can only be shared under very strict terms and conditions and has to comply with all GDPR and data protection legislation.
So it really is giving you a better capture of what's actually happening. You had the national picture in terms of total tonnage coming into the country, but we didn't necessarily know the usage or was there a carryover stock from year to year previously. So it is giving us a better handle on things.
Yeah, it will do. So we'll know the use, whereas previously it was just about sales data. It was what, like you say, it's what was coming into the country, and it was assumed that was all used. That's, I suppose it balances out over the course of a few years anyway, but it'll give us a much better handle, and it's much better data to be able to go back to the EU with in terms of the derogation.
So just like in terms of the timelines for this year, you might take us through that.
Okay, so timeline. I know we're well past the 24th of July, but registration opened on the 24th of July because that's the date that the legislation was through. The date, the 1st of September. So that's the date when you need to provide your herd number and you need to be registered on the system. The date, it's also the date from which imports, and I'll get to that later on in the presentation, but if you're importing directly onto your farm from outside the state, whether that's Northern Ireland or Great Britain, France, the Netherlands, wherever it is, you need to record that on the system through Ag Food. So it's a date, the 1st of September is also the date from which all fertiliser transactions need to be recorded by retailers, co-ops, merchants. The next important date then is the date for closing stocks for farmers and professional end users. So that's the 14th. So what you have on your farm at a minute to midnight on the 14th of September, that can be entered anytime from the 15th of September all the way up to the 15th of October. So the 15th of October is the deadline for entering that closing stock. And I suppose that closing stock, along with the sales to that farm during the year and the closing stock at the end of the year, will give us the figure for individual farms. So that's important. And just to say that in terms of registrations at the moment, we are up at 90,000 out of an expected 130,000 for farmers. And that's increasing quite rapidly, even this morning now. The 15th of December, that's when the co-ops and the merchants have to enter their data for September, October, and November. So we delayed that slightly. It was meant to be the 15th of October, but we decided that because there's a lot of work for the co-ops on this, that it was best to give the extra 2 months to get their systems set up to be able to talk to our systems. So they'll be able to upload that. From then on, the December data will come in the middle of January data in the middle of February, and so on. So requirements for fertilizer suppliers, and this is just to cover what they have to do and you don't have to do, essentially. So they'll all have to register if they're supplying fertilizer or lime. They'll be assigned a unique identifier. Fertilizer transactions will be submitted to the department by the deadlines specified in the legislation, and they will have to give us their closing stock at a minute to midnight on the 30th of September, and they'll have to declare that by the 15th of October.
All the co-ops that will be interacting with anyone supplying lime, they'll all be up on the system for the coming season.
They will be, yeah. Yeah. And again, that's a process. It's ongoing. There's quite a few of them in the system at the moment. But there seems to be good buy-in on that side as well. There seems to be a lot of applications in to get set up on the system. So then I suppose what data do they have to provide to us? So they will have the fertilizer dispatched, who they sent it to, when they sent it, and what the product was. So it's about the physical movement of the fertilizer. So if you buy it, and I suppose that's something to be aware of, if you buy fertilizer in January, but it's not delivered until February, you won't see it in the January figures. You'll only see it when the product actually lands on your farm. That's the date that we're interested in from the supplier. So just to be aware of that.
That's an important one. I suppose we align that with the fact that it's going to go up in the middle of the month every month for those that are going to keep track of it. That'll have a bit of an impact as well.
It will indeed. So if you're looking at information at the end of February, you'll see the January stuff should have gone up on the 15th of February. But that's all. And it's only the deliveries that were made in January, not necessarily the sales, you see. So yeah, it's just to be aware of that you may think that there's stuff missing on your account, but it may be just that. So it's the date it landed on your farm. That's the one that we're looking at. So information required for the transactions. So there's a unique identifier for every merchant. So they'll have theirs, product ID from the catalogue. And I suppose this catalogue is being built at the moment. We have a lot of data in from the main players, but unfortunately not everything has come in yet. So most of the big sellers are in there. So it shouldn't be a problem for the vast majority of people, but there are a lot of, smaller tonnage products that are sold that aren't in the catalogue. Now, companies have come back even this week with additional information. The problem is it takes a bit of time because IT have to put that up for us. So there's a couple of weeks of a lag between me getting the information, going through it myself and checking it and getting it actually up on the system.
A bit of teething problems, obviously.
Yeah, I think there'll be work on that all the way through, I'd say, till, the end of this year or even into January, just to make sure we have everything. And I suppose we'll have more queries on that when lads are entering their closing stocks. And, if there's things missing that they have on farm, they can certainly contact us and we can add the particular product to the system and we can allow them we can take that information off them as to what they have. It'll be useful for us because then we'll have it sorted for when things get properly busy next spring. So there's a unique identifier for the customer. So for farmers, that's their herd number, quantity in tons that was dispatched, the date of dispatch, and the transaction type. So if you get something and you need to send it back, there is a facility in the system for a return to your merchant or your supplier, just so that that's not sitting on your account when it shouldn't be. Methods of getting data to the department. So there's ag food, which is what farmers will be using. and very small merchants may use ag food as well. It's a manual entry. And then there's an API, which is an application programming interface. And I suppose what that means is that the computer systems in the merchants can speak to our computer systems, so they can upload the data directly on a monthly basis. And so it makes it a lot more straightforward. And there's a validation step in that, so it will check that the numbers involved are valid and are in the system. So farmer registration then, like I said, we're up at 90,000 already. So it's looking pretty good.
I'm just conscious of the time of this podcast going out. We're into September already. So that 1st of September deadline, Finbarr, for those that haven't registered by now, will there be any penalty on that? Can they still register?
Yeah, they can still register. And I suppose the thing is, if there's an awful lot of lads out there who aren't buying fertilizer during September, so then they just need to be registered in time to put in their closing stock. So the closing stock, the facility for that on ag food, and I'll get into it a little bit later, that'll be available from the 15th of September. So they can go in on the 15th and register and declare a closing stock, whatever products they have on farm. And they have a deadline of the 15th of October to enter that closing stock. So we would expect to be at pretty much 100% by that date, by the 15th of October. So registration, the farmer or the agent. I think if you've got an agent, they may have the access to register you on the National Fertiliser Database, and you may not have it. If they're doing BIS payments for you, they were all put across so that they have access to the National Fertiliser Database. So the steps involved through ag food. So you log into ag food, so you'll have your credentials there to get in. You look at the authorized applications, scroll down to National Fertiliser Database, click on that. It brings you to this screen. So your business ID is there. Now click on the plus sign under actions and you will get registration. So this asks you, do you want to be registered on the system? You tick the box, then you click submit, click yes. And that's it. It's done.
So essentially, when anyone goes into the National Fertiliser Database tab, it's very straightforward. Your herd number's going to be there, and your actions is literally just to register. It's a straightforward process to go through.
It is indeed. But just to say that we have had some queries because people have tried to go in themselves, and it's maybe the agent that has the access rather than themselves. So just to be aware of that, if you have an agent, it may work that way. Then to check. For
anyone that just wanted to check,
Yeah, if you want to check your registration, you can go back in here, click on the three dots under actions, click on registration, and then it brings it up here. So it was submitted on whatever date, and your business ID will be up there.
So again, just for those farmers that haven't registered so far, they can still go in and do this. There's no problem with going in and registering at this stage.
No, there's not. They can still register. And as I say, if they're not buying fertilizer, until sure a lot of lads mightn't be buying fertilizer till the spring, then they have between the 15th of September and the 15th of October to go in and register and declare a closing stock.
But it's important that they're in before that 15th of October because they're going to have to declare the closing stock.
Exactly. I suppose we'll be following up then at that stage if people have particular issues with registering. I would advise them to contact us as soon as possible if they're trying to register and they're having some issues. Absolutely, they should get onto us, and we'll look up the herd number and we'll see what exactly the issue is. We've had quite a few queries now in the last few weeks on various different things. So it's important that if you are having an issue, don't just ignore it. Just contact us. It's better. And I suppose there is an email address on the website, which is nationalfertilisersdb@agriculture.gov.ie, and that's the one to contact. And we'll work our way through those. It's a better way than ringing in most of the time. But if you have to ring in, absolutely do that as well, and it'll be passed on, and we'll follow up on it.
And I suppose, look, there are some slightly different circumstances here for some of them, but for farmers maybe that aren't spreading fertilizer, maybe in organic schemes or that, even new entrants going in, they're still going to have to register on the fertiliser database.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, we're going to have to show that we're covering everybody, and they'll have to enter a nil for the. That's the other thing, actually, the closing stock. Even if you have none, and I'll get to it further down, you have to declare that you have none. You still have to go into the system and just tick the box. And I suppose a lot of the a lot of farms will be using lime anyway, even if they weren't using fertilizer. But even if they're using neither, they should register and just tick the box. Now, if there's someone not registered on that, we'll see it over time, and we'll contact and we'll see if there's a particular reason for that.
Okay. You touched earlier on those maybe living in border counties who might be doing some trade with the North buying fertilizer in. It's a slightly different process for them.
It is indeed, yeah. So if you're buying in from outside the state, or you're directly onto your farm, or you're transferring product from your farm to another farm, then you need to be registered as a fertilizer economic operator, and this is done through Ag Food as well. And it's again a fairly straightforward process. So the farmer or the agent can go in. So registration as a fertilizer economic operator for a farmer only needs to be done once, as with the other registration. Either the first time you're doing a farm-to-farm transfer, or the first time you directly import product onto your own farm. So once you've done it once, that's done. So again, you go into Ag Food, click on National Fertiliser Database. You'll already have registered as a fertilizer end user at this stage. So you click on the three dots, click on farm-to-farm transfers in this case, because that's what this person is doing first. Then you can tick the box to register, submit it, and then you'll get this screen here. So you can record a farm-to-farm transfer. So your own ID is already in the system. So you put in the herd number that you're transferring to, the date that you did it, and the product. And I suppose it's just to be aware that once that's done, then that product is taken off your account and put onto the other business ID account. So if a farmer is importing, it's the same steps again. You click on the three dots. You've already registered as a fertilizer end user. Click on the direct imports for own use, and then you get a registration tab up here. Tick the box, submit it, click yes, and you're done. And then you get this. So direct imports, you're given the transaction date, the product you imported, the quantity, and the country it came from. And this here is about mode of transport, whether it's road or sea, because if it's sea, and this is, I suppose, for the larger guys importing, the big companies, they need to enter the name of the ship. That's the only reason that's in there.
Just like on that one, there is a timeline on the import.
Oh, sorry, apologies. There is, 72 hours. So from the time something lands on your farm, you have 72 hours to enter that information onto Ag Food, and the same goes for anyone importing. The bigger companies do the same thing.
So that's only for that scenario. That's not going to affect the majority.
It's not. No.
Look, I suppose the other big one then that's cropping up is our closing and our opening stocks. This one's important. So that's coming in from the end of the 14th, the end of the period where we can spread. So it's covering whatever's left on the farm, Finbarr.
Exactly, yeah. So you can enter this. You can't do it now, obviously, but from the 15th of September, that facility will be open. So you can go in and click on that. So again, it's through Ag Food. So you use your Actions tab, go down, click on the three dots, click on Closing Stock, and then you have two options. I declare I have no closing opening stock. So there's nothing on your farm, which... so we're told will be the case for the vast majority of lads, but if it's simple. You tick that box and you're done. The other option is to declare that you have stock on your farm, at least one product, 50 kilos or more. So I declare I have no opening stock, submit, you're done. So if you don't have anything, that's straightforward. If you declare that you have opening stock, you put in the product and the quantity. And again, the products will come from a drop-down list. So you'll see your 18612s or whatever it is on that. If you come across a product that isn't on that list, it's best for us if you contact us so that we have all that ironed out early. So we're expecting to get some queries on that when closing stock is being entered, and then the quantity in tons. And then there's a plus thing here. So if you've got 3 or 4 products, you can add another product there as well.
So just for farmers, there's a huge array of products out there. There's a wide catalogue with a lot of different suppliers. You'll have the vast majority of them should be up on the system. They should be searchable.
Exactly.
It's a pre-populated list.
They should be, because we've gone to the major importers. There's only 8 or 10 major guys for the agricultural side, and they've all sent back the problem is there may be some gaps in what they sent us. We're finding a few now, but the vast majority of it should be in there. So there shouldn't be an issue with that. But as I say, if there is, the thing is to contact us. We'll get that product up on the system, and we'll get back to you when we've done that, if there is something missing.
Okay.
Then that comes up, you can see what you've declared on the system. So you've grassland agro 730, 1,000 tons. That's a lot of stuff. So that's there. And you can submit that then. So that's the way it's going to go in. Or if you've made a mistake and you put the wrong thing in, you can just bin it and start again.
You can amend. Yep.
Yeah. So you'll have an opportunity there.
One of the simple errors that could happen here, that quantity is going up in tons as opposed to the kilos. So just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose after the fact, if you've submitted something and you realize afterwards that it was a mistake, again, you can contact us, and we can look at that. I think our option at the moment is to just delete it from the system and ask you to re-enter the correct amount. But it can be looked at. Hopefully there won't be too much of that, but that is, if you've made a mistake, you're as well off to tell us early, and we can get it sorted as well.
So our closing stocks, Finbarr, that has to go in from September, the end of the spreading period. So the 15th, it's open on up until October.
Exactly. So the 15th of October is the deadline for that. So we would expect, unless there's some very specific issue with registering for a particular farmer, we would expect the vast majority, pretty much 100%, to be in the system on or before the 15th of October.
So just then for farmers, like in that close period, if they purchase fertiliser for next year, there will be an opt-in stock required as well, will there, on the farms, or is that automatically pre-populated?
No, the only interaction they'll have is that closing stock on the 14th of September. The sales then will be recorded by whoever's selling to them, and then they just do a closing stock again at the end of at the end of the fertiliser year, the nitrates year, on the 14th of what's on their farm at the 14th of September again, and that can be entered from the 15th on.
So I think that's important from a recording point of view. The rest of it will be done by the merchant, and it's the closing stock annually, basically what you haven't used up, or if there's nothing available, is all that the farmer interaction really will have to be.
That's exactly it. So the vast majority of farmers will interact with this system once a year to enter the closing stock on farm. And I suppose, like I said, maybe lads will be cute enough, and the vast majority probably won't have a whole pile on the farm, if anything. And then you're only going in ticking a box to say you don't have any fertiliser on your farm on the 14th of September. If there is stuff there, I'd expect it not to be a huge amount of products. You'd be talking maybe 3 or 4 products max, and whatever tonnage of those are in. And it's important, I suppose, that to reiterate that it does go in tons, so that everyone is aware of that. So the only other thing is, if you're transferring farm to farm, or if you are importing, then you'll have those transactions to put in as well. But like I said, for the vast majority of farmers, there'll be one interaction with this system each year.
And just for those like whoever, if you wanted it, you could actually track your purchases right throughout the year. It's going to update the middle of the next month, so you can keep track of where you bought from and how much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as you say, it won't be real time. It'll be a few weeks behind, but you can keep an eye on that. And again, it's the date of dispatch. So when it's delivered to your farm, that's the date that's important for the system, as opposed to the date of sale. Okay. So yeah, you'll have that information. And I suppose for people who have to provide information on nitrates, they should be able to pull reports from this system in time. That'll do that for them.
So just maybe finally, Finbarr, for anyone that is having issues either registering or just certain queries with products on it, they can contact yourselves?
Yeah, they can indeed. The best way to contact us is still the email address. So that's National Fertilisers DB at agriculture.gov.ie. But we have informed the various help desks, and they'll be able to contact us on it as well. So if you do have to call in, they'll know who to forward it on, the details onto. And I suppose what they take is probably a herd number and a query, and then we'll follow up on it from there.
That's great. Listen, thanks, Finbarr. I appreciate that update. Thanks very much for coming on.
Okay, thanks, Kieran.
We'll leave it there for this week's episode. I'd like to thank Finbarr again for coming on and explaining the National Fertiliser Database and the register itself to us. I have included a link in the show notes to the Department of Agriculture's webpage on it, which contains a host of information about it, as well as some of the frequently asked questions, which hopefully will provide some more insight for you should you need it. That's it for me. For updates from the Sheep Programme, keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to follow us for more episodes.